Have you ever had one of those moments when you were watching a YouTube video in English and suddenly you realized, wait a second, I actually understand this? You smiled, you felt proud, maybe you even thought, I'm finally getting good at English. Then, just a few minutes later, someone looked at you and asked, so, what do you think? And somehow, everything disappeared. The words, the grammar, the confidence. Even the simplest sentence became impossible to say. If you've ever experienced that feeling, you're definitely not alone. And today's episode might completely change the way you think about learning English. Hi, everyone. I'm Ava. Welcome back to English Charisma. This is the podcast where we improve your English through real conversations, practical vocabulary, and topics that connect with everyday life. I'm really happy you're here today.
And I'm Leo. Whether you're listening while driving, walking, studying, or simply relaxing with a cup of coffee, thank you for spending your time with us. Today's conversation is about something almost every English learner has experienced. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner. It doesn't matter if you're an advanced learner. At some point, you've probably asked yourself this question. If I understand English, why can't I speak it? It's frustrating, sometimes even embarrassing. But here's the good news. There is a reason. And once you understand that reason, everything starts making a lot more sense.
Leo, can I tell you a little story?
Of course, I love stories.
A few years ago, I met a woman at an airport. She wasn't a native English speaker. She had been studying English for almost 7 years. 7 years. She could read newspapers. She watched documentaries without subtitles. She listened to English podcasts almost every day. Honestly, her English was impressive. While we were talking, she suddenly laughed. I asked, "What happened?" She smiled and said, "You know what's funny? I understand almost everything you say, but every time it's my turn to answer, I feel like my brain stops working." I never forgot that sentence. My brain stops working. Because I had felt exactly the same thing.
I think that's one of the most honest descriptions I've ever heard. Your brain doesn't really stop working. It just feels that way. It's almost like opening your closet, seeing hundreds of shirts, and somehow believing, I have absolutely nothing to wear. Everything is there, you just can't choose.
That's such a good comparison. The words are inside your brain. The grammar is there too. But when someone is waiting for your answer, finding the right words suddenly feels impossible.
Exactly. And most learners immediately blame themselves. My vocabulary isn't good enough. My grammar is terrible. My pronunciation is awful. I'll never become fluent. But today, we're going to challenge those ideas. Because what if those aren't the real problems?
Let's do a little experiment. Imagine you're watching a football match. Your favorite team is playing. One player receives the ball. Immediately, you think, pass. It's obvious. He should pass the ball. From your seat, everything looks easy.
Now, imagine something different. Imagine you're suddenly standing on the field. There are 50,000 people watching. The defenders are running toward you. Your teammates are shouting. The crowd is screaming. You have less than 2 seconds to decide what to do. Does the game still feel easy? Of course not. Nothing changed about football. Only your role changed.
And that's exactly what happens with English. When you're listening, you're watching the game. When you're speaking, you're playing it. Those are completely different experiences.
That's the first idea we want you to remember today. Listening and speaking are partners, but they are not twins. They use different processes inside your brain. When you're listening, your brain recognizes information. When you're speaking, your brain creates information. Recognition is much easier than creation.
Think about music. You can recognize your favorite song after hearing just 3 seconds. Easy. But could you sing every lyric perfectly without making a single mistake? Probably not. Recognition and production are different skills. The same thing happens with language.
Here's another example. Can you recognize your best friend's face? Of course, that's easy. Now, could you draw that face from memory perfectly? Most people can't. Again, recognizing something is easier than creating it.
The funny thing is, most learners never think about this difference. Instead, they compare listening to speaking, and when speaking feels harder, they think they're failing, but they're comparing two completely different tasks. It's like reading a recipe to cooking the meal. Reading is one thing, cooking is another.
Exactly. Reading a recipe feels simple. Everything is organized. Every step is written down. But once you're in the kitchen, you have to remember everything. The ingredients, the timing, the temperature, the order. Cooking suddenly becomes much more demanding. Speaking English feels exactly like that.
And here's something really interesting. Have you ever noticed how fluent you become when you're alone? You're taking a shower, you're driving your car, you're walking home. Suddenly, you start speaking English to yourself, and somehow you sound amazing. You use great vocabulary, your pronunciation feels natural, you even surprise yourself. Then, a real person appears, and your confidence disappears. Why? That's the question we'll answer next. Before we ended the last episode, we asked a simple question. Why do you sound so confident when you're speaking English alone? But the moment another person joins the conversation, your confidence seems to disappear. If you've ever talked to yourself in English, you probably know exactly what we're talking about. You're in your room, you're taking a walk, you're driving your car, you're practicing English out loud. And honestly, you sound pretty good. You remember useful vocabulary, you make complete sentences, you speak naturally. Then someone says, "Hi, how are you?" And suddenly, everything changes. Why?
For years, I believed it was because I wasn't good enough. I thought, if I just learned more vocabulary, I'll finally become fluent. So I learned more words, hundreds of them, then thousands. But something strange happened. I still froze during conversations. Then I blamed grammar. I bought another grammar book. I watched more lessons. I memorized more rules. Guess what happened? Exactly the same thing. I still struggled to speak. That's when I realized maybe I was trying to solve the wrong problem.
I think many learners can relate to that. When something doesn't work, our first reaction is usually, "I need to study more." Sometimes that's true, but sometimes the problem isn't a lack of knowledge, it's the way your brain uses that knowledge. And that's a huge difference.
Let's think about driving a car. When you first learn to drive, everything feels difficult. You think about the mirrors, the pedals, the steering wheel, the traffic signs, the speed, the other cars. Your brain is trying to manage everything at once. It's exhausting. But after enough practice, something changes. You don't think about every little action anymore. Many things become automatic. That's why experienced drivers can have a conversation, listen to music, and still drive safely. Their brain isn't working harder, it's working smarter.
Speaking English works in a very similar way. Many learners know the rules, but those rules haven't become automatic yet. So every conversation feels like driving a car on your very first day. Every sentence requires effort. Every word feels like a decision. Every pause feels uncomfortable.
Here's another interesting question. When someone asks you a question in your native language, do you build the sentence one grammar rule at a time? Probably not. You simply answer. The words appear naturally. You don't think, should I use the present perfect or maybe the past simple? Your brain doesn't work like that. It has already learned the patterns.
But in English, many learners do exactly that. Someone asks, "What did you do last weekend?" Instead of answering, your brain starts having a meeting. Wait, should I say went or have gone? Do I need the here? Is this sentence correct? Maybe I should choose another word. By the time you've finished thinking, the conversation has already moved on.
And that's one of the biggest reasons conversations feel stressful. Real conversations don't wait. People don't pause for 30 seconds while you search for the perfect sentence. They keep talking. The conversation keeps moving. That's why many learners feel left behind, not because they're unintelligent, but because they're trying to be perfect.
Perfection can actually become your biggest enemy. Think about children. Do they wait until every sentence is perfect before speaking? Not at all. They make mistakes. Lots of mistakes. Sometimes they invent words. Sometimes their grammar is completely wrong. But they keep talking. And because they keep talking, they keep improving.
Adults often do the opposite. We stay quiet until we're sure. We check every sentence in our heads. We edit every word before saying it. And while we're busy editing, we stop communicating. That's the trap.
Have you ever noticed how quickly conversations move? Someone tells a story, another person laughs, someone asks a question, another person interrupts with a joke. Nobody is trying to create perfect English. They're simply trying to connect. That's what conversations are really about. Connection, not perfection.
Exactly. Native speakers make mistakes too. They forget words, they restart sentences, they change their minds halfway through. Sometimes they say, "What was I trying to say?" Or, "I totally forgot the word." That's normal. Real communication is messy, and that's okay.
So maybe, instead of asking, how can I speak perfect English, a better question would be, how can I communicate more comfortably? Because confidence doesn't come from knowing every word, it comes from trusting yourself even when you don't know every word.
And that leads us to something even more important. There's one habit, a habit almost every English learner has. Most people don't even realize they're doing it. It's invisible. It feels natural, but it quietly slows down every conversation. And the surprising part? You've probably done it today, maybe even a few minutes ago.
In the next part, we're going to uncover that hidden habit. Once you recognize it, you'll understand why speaking feels slow, why conversations feel exhausting, and why your brain seems to freeze at exactly the wrong moment. Sometimes, the biggest obstacle isn't your English at all, it's the way you're thinking. We mentioned a habit that quietly affects almost every English learner,
A habit so common.
that most people don't even realize they're doing it.
So, what is it?
It's this: translating every sentence in your head.
Not every learner does it all the time.
But many learners do it far more often than they realize.
And when you translate everything, your brain has to do twice the work. Let's imagine someone asks you a very simple question. What did you do yesterday?
Sounds easy, right? But here's what happens inside many learners' minds.
First,
They understand the English question.
then they translate it into their native language.
Next,
They think of an answer in their native language.
after that,
They try to translate their answer back into English.
then
They check the grammar.
they search for the right vocabulary.
They worry about pronunciation.
Finally,
They speak. That's a very long journey for one simple answer.
now let's compare that with a fluent speaker. Someone asks, "What did you do yesterday?"
The brain immediately creates the answer in English.
No translation.
No second language.
No extra step. Just question, idea, answer. It's much faster.
Think of it like taking a flight. Imagine you want to travel from New York to London.
You could take a direct flight,
Or you could fly to another country first,
wait for several hours.
then take another flight to London.
Both routes get you there, but one is much longer. Translation works the same way. Every extra stop costs you time.
Now, let's be clear. Translation isn't bad. In fact, it's completely normal when you're learning.
Almost everyone starts that way.
The problem is staying there for too long.
If every sentence has to pass through your first language, speaking will always feel slow.
I remember something that happened to me years ago. I was ordering coffee while traveling.
The barista asked, "What size would you like?"
Such a simple question.
But my brain started searching.
What size? Okay, what does she mean? Small? Medium? Large? How do I answer politely? By the time I finished thinking,
The barista smiled and asked again. "Take your time."
I wasn't confused because the English was difficult. I was confused because I was trying to build the perfect answer.
I had a very similar experience. Someone asked me, "Have you been here before?" Instead of answering immediately, I started thinking about grammar. Wait, present perfect, have been. How should I answer? Then I realized something funny. If someone had asked me the same question in my native language, I would have answered in less than 1 second. The delay wasn't caused by English, it was caused by overthinking.
Overthinking is one of the biggest enemies of fluency. Many learners believe that speaking slowly means they're not good enough. But that's not always true. Sometimes you're simply thinking too much. You're editing every sentence before anyone else even hears it.
Here's a little challenge. The next time someone asks you an easy question in English, don't look for the perfect answer, look for the clear answer. For example, "What did you eat today?" Instead of trying to create an impressive sentence, simply say, "I had eggs for breakfast," or "I ate pasta for lunch." Short, simple, natural. That's real communication.
Native speakers do this all the time. They don't always use long, complicated sentences. Sometimes the best answer is the shortest one. Think about these examples. How was your weekend? It was great. What are you doing later? Just relaxing. Are you hungry? A little. Simple doesn't mean weak. Simple means natural.
There's another mistake many learners make. They believe they have to know every single word before speaking. Imagine you're telling a story. Suddenly, you forget one word. Many learners stop talking completely, but fluent speakers don't. They explain the idea another way. For example, you forget the word umbrella. Instead of stopping, you might say, "You know, the thing you use when it rains." Communication continues. The conversation doesn't stop.
That's a skill called paraphrasing. And honestly, it's one of the most valuable speaking skills you can develop. Because in real conversations, nobody knows every word, not even native speakers. Sometimes we all forget words. The difference is, fluent speakers keep talking anyway.
Let's do a quick exercise together. Imagine someone asked, "What's your favorite movie?" Don't spend 30 seconds searching for the perfect answer. Just say the first honest thing that comes to mind, then explain why. That's enough. Conversations don't require perfect speeches. They require honest responses.
Exactly. And once you stop trying to sound perfect, something amazing happens. Your brain relaxes, your confidence grows, and surprisingly, your English starts sounding more natural. Not because you suddenly became smarter, but because you finally gave yourself permission to communicate instead of perform.
So now we know 3 important things. First, listening and speaking are different skills. Second, perfection slows you down. Third, constant translation makes speaking much harder than it needs to be. But there's still one final question. How do we actually train our brain to speak more naturally? How do we stop freezing during conversations? And how can we build real confidence instead of pretending to be confident?
That's exactly what we're going to explore in the final part of today's episode. We'll share practical habits, simple daily exercises, and one technique that many confident English speakers use without even realizing it. And the best part, you can start using it today.
We've talked about why speaking feels harder than listening. We've talked about overthinking, perfection, and translating every sentence in your head. Now it's time for the most important question. What can you actually do about it?
The first piece of advice is surprisingly simple. Speak before you feel ready. Not because you're careless, but because confidence usually comes after action, not before it. Many learners wait until they feel confident. The problem is that they rarely comes. Confidence grows through experience, not through waiting.
Here's another habit that can make a huge difference. Stop memorizing individual words. Instead, learn complete phrases. For example, don't only learn the word decide. Learn phrases like I've decided to, I can't decide, it depends. These ready-made phrases help your brain respond much faster during conversations.
And don't be afraid of simple English. Some learners think they need long, advanced sentences to sound fluent. That's not true. Fluent speakers often use simple words. They just use them naturally. Clear communication is always better than complicated communication.
Finally, practice speaking every day. Even 5 or 10 minutes can make a difference. Describe your room, talk about your day, retell a movie. Ask yourself questions and answer them in English. The goal isn't to be perfect, the goal is to make speaking feel normal.
Before we finish, we'd like to leave you with one thought. The next time your mind goes blank, don't tell yourself, my English is terrible. Instead, remind yourself, my brain is still learning to respond automatically. That's a much more accurate and much more encouraging way to see it.
Learning a language isn't about knowing every word. It's about having the courage to use the words you already know. Every conversation, every mistake, and every small success moves you one step closer to fluency.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe to English Charisma for more real English conversations designed for B1 and B2 learners.
And here's a question for you. What's the biggest challenge you face when speaking English? Leave your answer in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Take care, keep practicing, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.